In example 9, we'll look at one last problem where we attempt to optimize a multivariable function, which in this case isn't going to work, and we'll see why as we progress through the problem. We'll start off by finding the first partial derivatives, which will be negative 2 over x, since the derivative of the natural log is 1 over x, minus 2, and k sub y will be 4y. This gives us two equations to solve. Negative 2 over x minus 2 is equal to 0, and 4y is equal to 0. Pretty easily we get y equals 0 as one solution. Solving the first equation, we get negative 2 over x is equal to 2. We can do whatever we want to this equation as long as we do the same thing to both sides of the equation. So we're going to take the reciprocal of both sides. We'll make this negative x over 2 is equal to negative 2. Is equal to, I took the opposite, not the reciprocal. So that's going to become 1/2, which I still didn't write very clearly. Let's do that one more time. So we get negative x over 2 is equal to 1/2. Multiplying both sides by 2 will give us negative x is equal to 1, or x is equal to negative 1. Right here we run into a problem because in all of the other cases we've said something like now we have a critical point at negative 1, 0, but in this point we don't, because that critical value is not in the domain of the original function. The domain of the natural log function is x greater than 0, meaning x can't be 0 or a negative value. Since we ended up with x equals negative 1, that process, we followed it through, we arrived at a point, but that is essentially an extraneous solution. That critical value doesn't exist because the function is undefined at x equals negative 1. So we aren't going to find any extrema, but we can still complete these second derivatives. We would get k sub xx is equal to negative 2 x to the negative 1 minus 2, the derivative of that function, which would be 2x to the negative 2. K sub xy would be equal to 0. K sub yy is equal to 4. And k sub yx would be equal to 0. So in this case, there are no local extrema, there are no saddle points. So actually back in part B, we would say for any critical values that no points exist or does not exist, and our result here would be does not exist. There are no points to classify because the only critical value that we found turned out to not actually be a critical value.